Hello, thank you for joining us. I'm Stuart Norval.
And I'm Molly Hall. It's good to have you with us. Coming up in today's show, François Fillon starts a scandal of his own, accusing President Hollande of wiretapping.
The hard left on the rise. Jean-Luc Mélenchon's last presidential run gains momentum.
Plus, they got it wrong in the UK and in the US, so will opinion polls get it right in France? That's up next in the Political Brief. There are less than 4 weeks to go before the first round of the presidential election, and the unpredictable campaign trail continues to be riddled with scandal potholes.
Yeah, that's right. François Fillon accusing the current president, François Hollande, of leading a smear campaign against him. Lagging in the polls, the Conservative candidate says he's actually being wiretapped.
Vous avez aujourd'hui
There are newspapers today which received documents that were just 48 hours earlier seized in police searches, such as the one in my office in Parliament. Who gives the press these documents? Government services. I am accusing the President of the Republic. A book is coming out soon. I've read some excerpts. It explains how François Hollande makes sure the judiciary wiretaps that interest him end up on his desk.
Well, so far, those wiretapping claims have not been backed up with any kind of proof, but Fillon's team is pushing for further investigation. As for the government, they're calling the claims pure speculation and a manipulation of reality.
That's right, Stuart, and François Fillon isn't alone. The far-right's Marine Le Pen agrees. She says the government has been listening in for decades. But as Fillon heads out against the president, Le Pen is taking on a bigger target, the EU.
The European Union will die because the people don't want it anymore. We'll confirm once again that arrogant and hegemonic empires are destined to perish. We are going to change Europe, the idea of Europe jeopardized by these federalist gravediggers. We will give new life to Europe, the Europe of the people, the Europe of nations, of mutual cooperation with our allies.
Criticizing the EU plays well with Le Pen's base, but a majority of French people want to stay in the Union.
Yeah, another candidate who's sceptical of the EU and globalisation is the far left, Jean-Luc Mélenchon. Now, he is currently flirting with fourth or fifth place in the election, flip-flopping, if you like, with the socialist candidate, Benoît Hamon.
Mélenchon, though, has been a fiery mainstay of French politics for decades, and he's now gaining support for his last run at the Élysée.
At one of his recent rallies, he appeared as a hologram, but his presence in the presidential race is anything but an illusion. With the ruling Socialist Party in disarray, Jean-Luc Mélenchon is increasingly seen as a force to be reckoned with.
He's the only serious candidate running.
I like Mélenchon because I think he's the one who will protect the jobless and pensioners.
Thousands turned out to join his rally at Paris's Republic Square, where the candidate called for constitutional reform, one of his key campaign proposals.
Whatever the problem is, the solution lies with the people. By drafting a new constitution, it's the people who will rebuild, put everything back together, in order to create, once again, an indivisible republic.
Although he managed to attract younger voters through his YouTube channel and other social media platforms, Mélenchon hasn't changed his core policies since he ran for president 5 years ago. He's the candidate of the far left, supported by the Communist Party, who wants to block free trade deals and shorten France's 35-hour work week. His recent gain in momentum is thanks in part to a strong showing during the first televised presidential debate held among the 5 leading candidates. The 65-year-old was once a socialist minister, but Mélenchon quit the party in 2008, saying it wasn't leftist enough. He launched his own political movement.
We're going to reconquer our country metre by metre with our argument. That's the task for each of you.
As member of the European Parliament, he continued to appeal to the hard left, as leftist coalitions made gains elsewhere in Europe, like Greece's Syriza and Spain's Podemos. Mélenchon has now unveiled a new slogan, the force of the people, as he continues to present himself as the people's candidate, one that fights the establishment.
That was Duke Royer there with a look at Jean-Luc Mélenchon and his own brand of leftist populism. Now, on the other end of the political spectrum, we've seen an anti-establishment message paying off in Britain and in the United States. So will it spill over in France? Well, France 24's Douglas Herbert is here to give us the answer. Doug, I've got a question for you because you were wrong when you said that Donald Trump would not become president of the United States. So why should we believe you when you say that Marine Le Pen will not become France's next president?
First of all, I'm going to say is unlikely to become France's next president. I'm going to hedge my bets because any political pundit worth their salt these days has to play it safe. Unlikely is the word I'm going to use. And why am I saying that? Look, you're right. They have the same message, right? They check a lot of the same boxes. They're anti-immigration. They're anti-Islam. They have the same message about bringing manufacturing jobs back, about regaining sovereignty for their countries, right? They sound the same. They look the same. It's not exactly the same political model, and this is where the hitch lies. You have this two-stage system of voting in France, right? 2 rounds of the election. That's really the French insurance policy, if you will. Charles de Gaulle brought the system back of the popular vote and also reinstituted this 2-stage election. Why did he do it? He was afraid of the communists way back then, but it has become since then seen as sort of an insurance policy against extremists getting the power. What it means is after that first round, so you have Marine Le Pen and the National Front often getting past that first round in recent years, but then it gives the French that chance to take the step back and say, not so fast, slow down. Do we really want to see her in power? And time and again, at every hurdle, whether it's 2002 or whatever, her father falls at that final hurdle. And we've also seen her in regional elections here doing very well in the first round and then failing to gain a single region of France in the second round. You might say I'm being wildly, overly optimistic in all of this, but it has worked so far. You have to ask, are the numbers there? And I'll just say there's a popular vote in France. Remember, in the U.S., twice in the past 17 years, we have had the candidate who has won the actual popular vote, losing the presidency because it's a different system. So perhaps that's also an insurance policy here in France. You need an absolute majority to win.
Doug, there are also historical factors at play here, aren't there? I mean, the National Front has been rising in popularity, hasn't it?
Absolutely. You know, it's interesting. You forget it's been around forever. The party was founded back in 1972. You had Jean-Marie Le Pen there, her father, with that, you know, the trademark eye patch standing up there in the very first rallies over 40 years ago. But what you forget about is for many years it was absolutely stable. It really didn't have that much momentum, really until, you know, what happened was in the early 2000s, you started to have the momentum build. Obviously, you had that landmark election in 2002, but then you had all these signature issues. Identity politics started to come into play. It wasn't just economic issues anymore. You had the Islamic issues in more recent years come into play, and you really have had what some people say is a very alarming rise of the National Front. And like I said, until now, because of that 2-stage election, despite its gaining in popularity and the momentum that we've seen in recent years, it has fallen at that. It hasn't been able to shatter that glass ceiling of the second round. Now, just to hedge my bets a little more, okay? So I don't come out looking like a fool, and you won't be playing the tape back in a few weeks showing how stupid I looked. How stupid I looked. I will say this. It is each election cycle, the National Front does seem to do better and better in terms of the amount of votes they get in that second round. So it's not unforeseeable that in some time in the future they might actually break that glass ceiling. It's not going to happen. I'm going to get off that fence. It's not going to happen in this election cycle.
OK, Doug, well, let's have a look at some of the polls, shall we? These are some of the latest figures. It's been fairly consistent for a few weeks now. Marine Le Pen and Emmanuel Macron out on top in the first round. In the second round, though, Macron fairly easily winning. Point is, though, Doug, can we actually trust any of these figures, do you think?
Well, I trusted the polls, and as you said, I was totally wrong. Look, me and a million other people. It's interesting with the polls here because everyone's become more wary of polls. But then again, poll bashing is sort of the national sport, the international sport these days. And they're not always entirely wrong. So people are still looking closely at the polls. It is interesting to note, though, that a prominent French, a very popular newspaper here, Le Parisien, decided a little over a month ago to actually stop running polls. Yeah. It said it wanted to get out of this whole horse racing element of elections, of the French elections. It wanted to instead, it's not that they totally hate polls, they just wanted to get more of their resources in reporting into getting the mood on the ground, talking to people, rather than having everyone navel-gazing and focused on these polls, as the chart you put up showed. But that said, I will go back to the polls, and I will say, yes, while it's a very tight race right now in the first round, and almost every pundit has Marine Le Pen as a shoo-in getting into the second round, what we were talking about, almost just about every poll, I don't think I've seen one poll, maybe you have, that has Marine Le Pen right now winning in the second round. In fact, they have, depending on who she's up against, if she goes up against Emmanuel Macron, him winning by about 20% margin. If François Fillon is now trailing in third or fourth place, if he were to come back, it would be about 55-45. But you do not have a scenario, according to the polls at least, in which Marine Le Pen would be winning in that second round, for what the polls are worth.
All right, Doug. Well, thank you. We are going to end it there. Exactly. Well, thank you very much for that. Now, we do know that a key factor, it will be undecided voters, as for the moment, roughly 40% of people say they don't know who they're voting for.
Yeah, of course, they've got to actually make it to the ballot in the first place. Voter turnout likely to be a major issue, as an increasing number of people say they simply won't vote.
France is facing into one of the most unpredictable presidential elections in its history, with many voters even undecided about whether or not to cast a ballot. A new survey shows that for the first time, more than 30% of voters are planning to stay home on polling day.
I've totally forgotten about that. I've other priorities at the moment.
Politicians are all the same. I vote every time, but nothing changes.
43% of those under 35 say they won't vote. Some are weary of politics, but others want to make a political statement.
Abstaining should not be seen as a sign of indifference. It's a sign of protest against what's being offered by politics, by the election campaign. We have 11 candidates, but none of them are convincing the French people.
Some of the disaffected have created a group which is aiming to influence change in the electoral system.
For me, the election isn't a democratic process, in the sense that accepting to give somebody the power to take decisions instead of doing it myself. That's not my idea of democracy.
With so many candidates and such an unpredictable campaign, the size of the eventual voter turnout could prove crucial.
Sharon Gaffney there. Well, that brings us to the end of our programme. Thanks again for joining us.
And we'll leave you now with images from the campaign trail, and we'll see you next week on The Political Brief.